Diana pressed the call button for the third time, holding her smartphone tightly against her cheek. The line rang, long, cold, in different rings, before a mechanical voice of an answering machine cut in. "Maxim, please pick up," she cried into the empty room, frustrated, and then hung up once again. Her husband was away on another business trip. Important, urgent as all his recent trips seemed to be. He had left at dawn, taking nothing with him but the faint scent of his cologne lingering on the pillow and a dirty coffee cup left in the sink. Diana exhaled deeply and let her phone drop onto the kitchen table, right next to the untouched breakfast she hadn't yet eaten. Her eyes wandered again, landing on the thick white envelope sitting there. A stern-looking courier had handed it to her just half an hour ago. On the front, in official black letters, it said, "To Egorova Diana Vasilyevna." It looked like a verdict, a summons to court. A cold shiver ran through her.
Court? Why?
She was the owner of a small, cozy pizzeria, a simple, honest business. A law-abiding citizen. A taxpayer who always did things the right way. Surely, it must be a mistake. Something silly. Ridiculous. It could happen. She walked quietly, tiptoeing into her mother-in-law's room. The small camera installed just a couple of weeks ago, part of a video nanny system, blinked faintly as its motion sensor detected her movement. Raisa Anatolyevna lay on her specially designed bed, staring at the ceiling with eyes that saw nothing. 6 months ago, a stroke had taken away the strong, energetic woman she had once been. Now, she was silent and trapped in her own mind, unable to communicate. For 6 months, Diana had been changing her sheets, feeding her with small spoonfuls, turning her so she wouldn't get bed sores, and talking to her. Every day. "Good morning," Diana said softly, smoothing the blanket over her mother-in-law. "I have a small errand to run today. I'll be back quickly. The nurse will come in about an hour, as usual. I hope you're not lonely while I'm gone."
There was no reply.
Only silence filled the room. Diana paused for a moment, staring at the quiet, motionless figure in the bed. The envelope still waited on the kitchen table, heavy with unknown problems. She wanted to scream, to cry, to call Maxim again, but she stayed calm. She took a deep breath and reminded herself. First, take care of what she could control. Then, face the rest. Outside, the city was waking up, sunlight spilling into the kitchen. The small pizzeria, the unfinished breakfast, and the dirty coffee cup. The world continued, indifferent to the fear and uncertainty sitting quietly in that apartment. And Diana, carrying both hope and worry, stepped toward the door, ready to face whatever came next. Only the soft, steady sound of breathing filled the room. Sometimes, Diana thought she saw a flicker of understanding in the depths of the woman's dull, almost lifeless eyes, like a tiny spark of recognition. But it was just a moment, fleeting and gone as quickly as it appeared. She kissed the dry forehead of the woman lying there and stepped out quietly. From the coat rack, she grabbed her light trench coat and her bag. The court summons in her pocket burned like fire against her side. Every step toward the courthouse made it feel heavier, as if it were not just paper, but a weight pressing against her chest. The building itself loomed over her, massive and imposing, radiating the kind of inevitability that made her stomach twist. The guard at the entrance glanced briefly at the summons and waved her through without a word. "Room 7. Second floor. Turn left at the corridor," he said gruffly. The echo of her heels bounced through the empty, cavernous hallway, sending a nervous rhythm into her chest. Every step felt louder than it should, each one like a drumbeat of anxiety. When she entered the courtroom, it was small, stuffy, and intimidating in its closeness. Behind the judge's desk sat 2 men in expensive suits, their faces serious and eyes cold. One man, slightly apart, immediately drew her attention. He was tall, with a sharp, hard jawline and gray cloud-colored eyes that seemed to pierce through everything. He wasn't looking at her directly. His attention was fixed on his phone, but even so, Diana could feel the chill of his presence, a cold, predator-like confidence that radiated without effort. Every movement of his perfect posture, the way he held himself, carried an unspoken disdain for everyone around him. Diana felt a shiver run down her spine, a warning she couldn't ignore. "Egorova Diana Vasilyevna?" the judge asked, her voice clear and measured as she looked up at Diana.
Yes.
"That's me," Diana replied. Her voice was steadier than she expected, though confusion and fear churned inside her. "But I don't understand. There must be some mistake." One of the younger lawyers, wearing a self-satisfied expression, stood up. "No mistake, Your Honor," he said confidently. "Ms. Egorova acted as a guarantor for a large loan. The borrower has stopped making payments, and according to Clause 41 of the contract, the responsibility for repaying the debt now falls entirely on the guarantor." Diana's mind went blank for a moment. She looked from the lawyer to the judge, disbelief and panic rising like a tide. I wasn't anyone's guarantor," she whispered, almost to herself. "I never signed any documents like that. I never agreed to anything like this." But the lawyer didn't waver. The cold certainty in his eyes said it didn't matter what she said. The paper said one thing, and that was the law. Her heart pounded as she realized the magnitude of the situation. This wasn't a small misunderstanding. It was a trap, and somehow she had fallen right into it. "Your signature is on the contract," the lawyer said briefly, handing a folder to the court secretary. A minute later, the document was placed in front of Diana. She picked it up, her hands trembling. It was a guarantee contract for a loan with 6 zeros. Her eyes immediately went to the bottom, to the space labeled guarantor. There, bold and sweeping, was a signature, D.V. Egorova. Her signature. It looked just like hers, and yet it felt completely foreign. Diana stared at the letters, at the slant of the handwriting, and felt her mind go completely blank. "This isn't me," she whispered, barely able to get the words out, as if speaking them aloud could make the world stop spinning. "It looks like my signature, but I didn't do this. I would remember signing something like this." For the first time, the man with the icy gray eyes spoke. He didn't stand. He didn't even fully look up from his phone. His voice was low, smooth, and carried an edge she couldn't ignore. "My name is Boris Vitalievich Cernovsky," he said. "I am the plaintiff. My lawyers do not make mistakes." He nodded toward his attorney, who sat beside him. "The signature is yours." Diana felt like someone had stripped her bare right there in the courtroom. His gaze wasn't angry. There was no hate. It was worse. It was cold, calculating, like an entomologist examining a butterfly before impaling it with a pin. "Your Honor, I don't understand what's happening." Diana's voice cracked, barely audible. The judge sighed heavily and looked at her over her glasses. "Diana Vasilyevna, calm down. Let's go step by step. You claim you did not sign this guarantee contract." "Yes," Diana said, swallowing hard, her throat tight with fear. "Very well," the judge said, flipping through a few pages. "Do you know who was the main borrower under this loan contract? Who actually took the money?" Diana shook her head violently, panic rising in her chest. She tried to imagine who among her friends, relatives, or acquaintances could have dragged her into something like this. The judge paused, letting the silence stretch unbearably. "The borrower," the judge continued slowly, "was Egorova Raisa Anatolievna, your mother-in-law." Diana's head spun. The words didn't fully register at first. The sounds of the courtroom blurred into a dull, oppressive hum. The judge's face, the self-satisfied smirk of the lawyer, the cold, sharp gaze of Cernovsky, all of it seemed to melt together and lose its shape. She felt trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Everything she thought she knew, everyone she trusted, even the walls around her, suddenly felt foreign and dangerous. Her stomach tightened, her heart raced, and all she could think was, how could this happen? How could her own mother-in-law be the reason she was being dragged into this nightmare? The courtroom seemed to close in around her. Every shadow, every whisper, every small movement of the people in that room was magnified. Diana realized, with a sinking feeling, that nothing would ever feel the same again. Only one thought ran through Diana's mind, hammering like a drum. Raisa Anatolievna. The woman she had spent the last 6 months caring for, changing her sheets, feeding her spoon by spoon like a child, holding her hand in the evenings while talking about how the day went at the pizzeria. The shock hit so hard it felt like the air had been knocked out of her. It was her mother-in-law who had taken that insane sum of money and, without even asking, had listed Diana as the guarantor. And now, when the debt had come due, Raisa Anatolievna was just lying there, staring at the ceiling, safe and untouched in her illness, while Diana was the one who would have to pay. "Your Honor, the responsibility will fall on my client, Diana," began the lawyer assigned to her by the court. Until now, he had stayed silent, clearly aware of how precarious her position was. "Given these new circumstances, I request the hearing be postponed. My client needs time to—" "Agreed," the judge nodded. "The hearing is postponed for 1 week." But Diana didn't even hear that. She felt as if she were moving through a dream. Rising to her feet, she walked toward the exit without looking at anyone. As she passed Boris, their eyes met. There was no sympathy in the icy gray eyes of the businessman, only the triumphant gaze of a winner. It was as if he had known all along, as if everything had been perfectly planned from the start. She stepped out of the stifling courtroom into the echoing corridor, then out into the cold, damp, gray day. The air felt raw, seeping through her trench coat. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Maxim. Finally. But Diana didn't answer. She didn't know what she could say. How could she explain that the woman she had cared for like a mother had planted a ticking bomb under their family, and that the creditor had just set it in motion? And then something clicked in her mind.
Exactly.
Oh, God.
Matvey.
It's Tuesday. I promised I'd come today. Diana couldn't help but smile a little. 8-year-old Matvey, a boy with serious, almost adult eyes, freckles sprinkled across his nose. Almost like a son to her and Maxim. For weeks, they had been gathering documents for adoption, and these visits to the orphanage had become a ritual for Diana, a promise of a future that suddenly seemed impossible. She pictured him sitting by the window in the shared playroom, waiting for her, the only person who had promised him a family. But going today empty-handed, no, that would be wrong. Little orphans didn't need her problems. They didn't need the panic or fear in her eyes. What they needed was joy. Pure, simple joy. And somehow, she would find a way to give it to him, even in the middle of the storm threatening to swallow her whole. A small, warm corner of happiness, smelling of cheese and fresh-baked dough. "Pizza," Diana whispered to herself. "I'll bring them pizza and cinnamon rolls." She turned and hurried toward her pizzeria, but right at the doorway, another humiliating reminder of her own weakness waited for her. Her car keys, the keys to her silver Beetle, lay in her bag like dead weight. She stared at them, and instantly her palms grew sweaty. "Okay, calm down, everything will be fine," she told herself, trying to force her racing heart to slow. Ever since that accident 3 years ago, when she had miraculously survived, Diana couldn't bring herself to drive. The thought of pressing the gas pedal triggered panic attacks, suffocating fear, and vivid images of twisted metal flashing before her eyes. Maxim had tried countless times to help her, but eventually, he gave up and simply drove her whenever she needed. When he was busy, she relied on taxis, each ride leaving her flushed with shame over her own helplessness. Her trembling fingers pulled out her phone, and she called for a station wagon, adding a note asking for help with loading the goods. 10 minutes later, a dark blue car pulled up to the curb. Diana had already finished giving instructions in the kitchen and was ready to leave. Her girls, her pizzeria team, worked silently and quickly, feeling their owner's tension in the air. The kitchen filled with the heavenly aroma of baked dough, fresh basil, and melted mozzarella. The driver stepped out of the car, tall, with a friendly yet tired face, and dark hair mussed by the wind. Diana immediately noticed him limping slightly on his right leg, wincing with each step. He moved toward the trunk, clearly intending to help, but every step etched a shadow of pain across his face. "Hello, I ordered the car," Diana said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Good afternoon. My name is Artyom," he replied with a nod. "Show me what needs to be loaded." Oh, no, no. Please don't bother. Diana interrupted him quickly. My team can carry everything themselves. Artyom raised an eyebrow in surprise. Passengers rarely showed such concern. Usually they just ordered. Open the trunk. I insist, he said stubbornly, his voice carrying a note of quiet firmness. I'm sure you can, Diana replied gently but firmly. I just don't want you to do it. Really rest. Please. She could see his surprise, but her voice left no room for argument. Even if he wanted to help, she wouldn't let him. Today, this small act of independence mattered more to her than anything else. Diana took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the kitchen, the smells of baked bread and cheese, the hum of her team working around her. And somehow, amidst the lingering fear and the heavy weight of recent days, she felt a small spark of hope. She could do this.
She would do this.
Even with the world pressing down on her, even with the chaos of her life outside these walls, she had something to give, something that mattered. And for a moment, just for that moment, she felt that small, warm piece of happiness, ready to take it with her to the children waiting for her. At that moment, the door of the pizzeria swung open, and her administrator stepped inside. Victor, young, ambitious, always dressed sharply, was an excellent organizer, but empathy was clearly not one of his strong suits. Diana Vasilyevna, Victor began, his voice polished and precise, deliberately ignoring the taxi driver waiting outside. I need to speak with you. It's about Varia again. Diana felt a tight knot of tension in her chest. What now, she thought. Late again by 20 minutes? Victor continued, matter-of-factly. I scolded her, and she almost cried. She said her youngest child had a fever, and there was no one to watch them. She waited for a neighbor. Diana Vasilyevna, this kind of behavior undermines discipline. We are not a charity. I think she should be fined as an example to the others. Diana frowned, a flash of irritation crossing her face. She noticed the taxi driver subtly turn his head, pretending to look at the shop's sign, but it was obvious he had heard everything. Of course he had. Varia had 4 children. Her husband had died a year ago while on duty. She was raising them alone on their modest salaries and a tiny allowance. If her child was sick, then that was the reality she had to face. And yet, she was one of the best helpers in the kitchen, always reliable, never shirking her duties. Victor began again. But the rules exist for people, not people for rules, Diana interrupted firmly. Her voice trembled slightly, but it wasn't weakness, it was emotion, barely contained. Do you even understand what it's like? She asked, eyes flashing. Torn between a sick child and a job that decides whether your kids will have dinner tonight. Instead of punishing her, ask how you can help. Does she need medicine? Go to her, tell her not to worry, and make a note to give her a month-end bonus for her resilience. Victor's lips pressed into a tight line. He looked offended, clearly unhappy with being corrected, but he dared not argue with the owner. He nodded stiffly and disappeared inside. Diana closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the pulse of frustration and fatigue in her temples. Her life was a constant balancing act, between running a business and showing compassion, between fulfilling her duties and honoring her own desires. Every decision carried weight, and every day felt like a test of strength and heart. 2 of her cooks came out of the pizzeria, carrying tall stacks of pizza boxes and large bags of pastries. They carefully and quickly loaded everything into the spacious trunk and onto the back seat of the taxi. All done, Diana Vasilyevna, reported the head cook. 15 large pizzas, 4 different kinds, and 2 bags of the freshest cinnamon rolls. Thank you, guys. You're the best, Diana said, managing a small smile. Anna squeezed out a smile in return, then walked around the car and climbed into the front passenger seat. Artyom started the engine quietly. For a while, they drove in silence, broken only by the soft rustle of tires on the wet asphalt and the faint music playing from the speakers. Diana watched the gray buildings flash by outside the window, and for some reason, she felt as though she were inside a glass sphere, separated from the world by an invisible wall. Sorry, she said suddenly, breaking the silence. Artyom glanced at her briefly. Don't apologize. You did the right thing. Not every boss stands up for their employees. At our taxi company, for example, everyone's just for themselves. Varia really is a good person, it's just that life has been so hard for her. Diana replied softly. Sometimes, a little humanity matters more than rules. That's true. Artyom chuckled. His laugh was short, but bitterly ironic. Diana couldn't help but look at him more closely. A deep crease ran between his eyebrows, and the hands resting on the wheel were tense. Sorry, maybe this is a silly question. Diana hesitated. Did you have an injury? He didn't look surprised. His limp was obvious.
Yes.
A souvenir, you could say, he said with a crooked smile. An accident a year ago. They put me back together, inserted a pin. They said I need another operation to take it out, but for now, this is it. I drive a taxi to earn money. Only when I walk a lot does it hurt. Fatigue flickered in his eyes. But it's okay. I've gotten used to it. You get used to everything eventually. Diana felt a strange unease. She had been complaining about her phobia, the fear that kept her from driving. And here was this man, climbing behind a wheel every day, fighting real physical pain just to earn enough for an operation that might take that pain away. Are we going to the orphanage? Artyom asked, trying to change the subject. So much pizza. Someone's having a birthday? Diana's face lit up. Talking about Matvey was so much easier than thinking about the court or the debt. Yes, she said, smiling genuinely. It's for Matvey. He'll be so happy. The ride suddenly felt lighter. For the first time in hours, she let herself think about something joyful, a small piece of hope amidst all the stress. No, it's nothing serious. I'm just visiting a boy at the orphanage. He's 8. Diana began, then faltered. I don't really know how to explain it after everything that's happened. My husband and we wanted to adopt him. The word wanted hung in the air, as if she had already given up on that dream. Her heart tightened painfully. That's a good thing, Artyom said quietly with respect. No unnecessary questions, no curiosity, just an acknowledgement. Children, they're the flowers of life, he added. Especially for those who don't have anyone. Yes, Diana whispered. Matvey is amazing. Such a serious little boy. He reads books about dinosaurs and dreams of becoming a paleontologist. He knows everything about them, the Jurassic period, the Cretaceous period. Her lips curved into a smile, without her realizing it. The first smile she had allowed herself all day, after a long, endless nightmare of a morning. As she spoke about the boy to a stranger, someone she barely knew, Diana felt a small flame of hope. Talking about him made it real again. There was something worth fighting for. Something worth living for. Have you always run a pizzeria? Artyom asked, skillfully navigating through traffic. No, Diana replied with a small laugh. I studied philology. I used to teach at a university. But then I realized I wanted to do something tangible, something you can touch and taste, something to share. My husband laughed at first, said it wasn't serious. But I took a small loan, found a space, and started developing recipes myself. This pizzeria, it became like my second child. The last words slipped out before she could stop them. She scolded herself silently. Don't get soft in front of a stranger, she thought. Artyom looked at her again. His gaze wasn't idle curiosity. It was genuine attention, genuine care. He had heard her conversation with the administrator and had seen the concern she carried, not just for her employees, but for others in general. Diana stayed quiet for a moment. Should she tell him more? To gain his sympathy? Something in Artyom's calm presence made her feel she could trust him, even though he was a stranger, a random person who might disappear from her life tomorrow. I had court today, she finally breathed out. They've put a huge debt on me. Apparently, I was a guarantor, but the signature is forged. The money, it was actually taken by my mother-in-law, the woman I care for. She had a stroke and can't speak. I can't even ask her anything. And my husband, he's on a business trip, phone doesn't answer. I don't know what to do. It feels like everything I've worked for is being taken from me, my pizzeria, our home, even the chance to adopt Matvey. Her voice trembled, though not from weakness, but from the weight of the truth she had carried all day. Artyom didn't interrupt. He just listened, letting her words fill the space, letting her release a little of the fear and frustration she had been holding in. For the first time since the nightmare began that morning, Diana felt slightly lighter, just a little. There was someone who heard her, someone who understood, even in the smallest way. And for now, that was enough. Diana fell silent, staring down at her hands, clasped tightly in her lap. No, she wasn't crying. The tears had stayed somewhere back at the courthouse steps, left behind with the tension and fear of the morning. Artyom drove in silence, eyes fixed straight ahead on the road. Diana already regretted opening up to him. He probably thinks I'm such a fool, she told herself. Finally, he spoke quietly. You know, when I had my accident, the person who caused it ran away. I spent months in the hospital. I lost my job. I was a construction engineer. My girlfriend left me. Said she wasn't ready to live with a disabled man. My money ran out. I honestly thought maybe it would have been easier to stay on that road, right there. He paused at a crosswalk, letting a group of pedestrians pass. But then a volunteer came to my hospital room. Just a guy, a student. Vitalik, I think his name was. He brought oranges and a book. And we talked for 2 hours about nothing, football, movies, random nonsense. When he left, I realized I wasn't alone. Even if your whole world collapses, someone will show up, someone who just brings you oranges. A small smile touched his lips. And somehow, that helped me understand that I had to keep fighting, keep moving forward. Diana watched him glance at the pizza boxes stacked on the back seat. You know, he said, today you're not just delivering treats. You are that person for someone else, the one who makes another person's world a little brighter, even when your own life feels like it's falling apart. His words were simple, without any drama. He didn't pity her. He didn't offer advice. He just shared a piece of his own pain and quietly drew a connection between their lives. Here we are, Artyom said softly, stopping the car in front of a gray, 3-story building with the words Orphanage Number 5 painted above the door. Diana quickly brushed away the tears on the back of her hand. Thank you, she whispered. I really appreciate everything. No need, he said, cutting the engine. Let me help you carry these inside. No rush. No, it's okay, she began. I'll call one of the staff. There's always someone who can help. But Artyom had already opened the door. I insist, he said, with the same gentle firmness she herself had used back at the pizzeria. Let me do something good today, too. Diana felt a warmth she hadn't experienced all day. Even in the middle of her own chaos, there was kindness, small, quiet, real. And for the first time in hours, she allowed herself to breathe. All right, let's do this, but no overdoing it, Diana said with a smile, opening the door. The smell hit them instantly. Pizza mixed with cinnamon and vanilla from the boxes of rolls burst into the orphanage air, warm and inviting, just a second before Diana stepped inside. Aunt Diana is here, someone shouted. Dozens of little feet stomped across the linoleum. Dozens of small voices joined into a joyful, messy chorus. Pizza. They brought pizza and rolls. A caregiver appeared, a full-figured woman with kind eyes. Again spoiling us, huh? Come in, come in. Diana smiled and handed some boxes to the staff. The children swarmed them immediately, like sparrows on breadcrumbs, tugging at the boxes, squealing with excitement. And Diana, did you come for me? Asked a thin, freckled little girl, tugging on the sleeve of Diana's coat. No, not for me, said a stocky boy. She came last time to see my drawings. Maybe you came for Lena and me? We're sisters. We can't be separated, piped the second girl, hiding shyly behind the first. Each word felt like a tiny needle, piercing Diana's already tender heart. Every visit of hers raised hope, and she hated to break it, even a little. Hello, my darlings, she said as gently as she could. Today, the treats are for everyone, but I came to talk to Matvey. The children's excited chatter quieted, replaced by small sighs of disappointment. Artyom, who had been standing quietly at the entrance with the last box, set it down on a nearby shelf. He stayed to the side, an outsider at this little festival of hope, and his limp made him stand out even more. A serious-looking boy of about 6 approached him, tilting his head, no hint of shyness in his gaze. "Are you a robot?" he asked boldly. Artyom paused for a moment. Diana saw a fleeting shadow cross his face, but then he smiled softly. "And why do you think that?" he asked. "You walk funny," the boy said, trying to imitate the mechanical clunking of a robot's steps. "Like you have a motor, doesn't?" Diana opened her mouth to apologize for the child's bluntness, but Artyom spoke first. "Almost right," he said seriously. "It's not a motor. It's a special metal piece in my leg to help the bone heal properly. So, I'm not exactly a robot, more like a cyborg. Like in the movies." The boy's eyes widened in admiration.
Whoa.
"Can it shoot?" "Not yet," Artyom said with a small grin. "That feature isn't installed." Diana felt warmth spread through her chest. Even on this chaotic, busy day, small moments like this, humor, kindness, connection, made everything feel lighter. And at that moment, he came out of the crowd, Matvey. Thin, small, with big gray eyes that seemed far too old for his 8 years, filled with a sadness no child should have. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He just walked quietly and stood next to Diana, as if looking for protection. "Hi," she whispered, kneeling down to be at his level and looking straight into his face. "Hi," he murmured back. "I came, just like I promised," she said softly. "I'm sorry I'm a little late. There were things to take care of." "It's okay," Matvey shrugged. Diana's heart sank. That simple "it's okay" was worse than any scolding. It carried the quiet resignation of a child who had been disappointed too many times before. "Come on, let's talk," she said, taking his small hand in hers. They moved to a quiet corner of the playroom and sat down on the tiny chairs. The smell of pizza and the faint sound of children's laughter reached them, muted by distance. "Matvey, look at me," Diana asked gently. The boy slowly lifted his big, sad eyes to meet hers. "Everything we talked about, me and Uncle Maxim, it's true," she continued. "We really want you to be our son. Do you understand? Right now, there are some small problems with the paperwork, but we will fix everything. Very soon, you'll come home with us. I promise." The boy's eyes held doubt. "Promise? Really? Really, she said firmly. "I will never lie to you." Matvey lowered his head, poking at the worn carpet with the tip of his slipper. "Sevka from my group said you wouldn't come," he whispered. "He said all adults just say things, and then they disappear. You'll play with me for a while, and then get bored. You'll find someone else, or just change your mind." Diana felt a hot, bitter shame for all the adults who had ever broken this child's trust. She reached out and gently held his face in her hands, lifting it so he could look at her. "Sevka's wrong. Do you hear me?" she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "He's just saying that because he's probably hurt too.
But we are not like them.
Me and Uncle Maxim? We will never change our minds. And I promise you, everything will be okay. And we will bake pizza together, just you and me. Do you want that?" Tears shone in Matvey's eyes. Diana hugged him close, breathing in the familiar scent of a shampoo. For a moment, she felt something incredible. If she could keep this promise to him, she could face anything else that came her way. The goodbye was quick. Diana promised she would call tomorrow, kissed him on the top of his head, and without looking back, walked toward the exit. Once they were back in the car, Diana felt the tension finally start to lift, replaced by an empty, ringing void that seemed to fill the space around her. She leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes, letting herself rest for just a moment. Then her phone, lying on the dashboard, gave a short, sharp buzz, lighting up with a notification. Baby monitor. Movement detected in Raisa Anatolievna's room. Diana frowned. That was strange. The sensor was set to minimal sensitivity, designed to ignore even small drafts or curtain sways. It should only react if someone actually entered the room. But there was no one at home. And what could possibly move in the room of a woman who hadn't lifted a hand or a foot in 6 months? Something wrong. Artyom noticed her furrowed brow.
I
don't know," Diana muttered. It's a notification from the camera in my mother-in-law's room. Probably a glitch. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened the app. She tapped the icon to view the recording, expecting to see an empty room, or maybe a fly buzzing past. But what she saw made the air freeze in her lungs. There was Raisa Anatolievna. Of course, she wasn't standing, but she was moving. Carefully glancing toward the door, she stretched out her left hand, which doctors had said had permanently lost all mobility, toward the nightstand. Her fingers, once thought to be useless, closed confidently around a smartphone hidden beneath a stack of napkins. Then, with the same sneaky, delicate precision, she brought the phone to her face. Her finger tapped the screen, and she began dialing a number. Diana zoomed in on the image, her heart racing as if it would burst from her chest. And then she saw it. On the phone screen was the familiar, smiling, confident face of her husband, Maxim. The same husband who was supposedly away on a business trip and hadn't answered her calls all day. The baby monitor's speaker was terrible. The sound was faint, almost nothing. Diana could only see the subtle movements of her mother-in-law's lips as she spoke rapidly and insistently. On the other end, Maxim nodded, listening carefully, reacting to each word. Diana sat frozen, unable to breathe, her mind spinning. The impossible was happening right in front of her eyes. It wasn't just a trick.
It wasn't just a small lie.
This was a full-blown scheme, a cruel, clever plot that had been playing out right under her nose all this time. Unbelievable, Diana whispered, her dry lips barely moving. The phone slipped from her weakening fingers and fell onto the car mat with a soft thud. Artyom's eyes flicked to her instantly, full of concern. He couldn't see the screen, but he could see her face, pale as a sheet, her eyes wide with terror. Diana, what's wrong? Are you feeling sick? Should I stop the car? He asked, voice sharp with worry. She could only shake her head, unable to form words. The air in her chest felt thin, almost gone. The betrayal was so deep, so total, it seemed to fill the entire car, pushing out every last breath of oxygen. Her sleepless nights, her endless worry, her compassion, everything she had given. All of it. It had been a lie. Artyom pulled the car over to the side of the road and switched on the hazard lights. Diana, look at me. Breathe, he said, his voice unusually calm. Slow inhale, slow exhale. Her trembling hands finally lifted the phone, and she restarted the recording. Her whole body shook uncontrollably. My mother-in-law, she's not really sick. At least, not the way she pretended to be. She's been faking it this whole time, and my husband, he's in on it with her. Diana whispered, showing him the screen. I can't hear what they're saying, she added. The speaker's awful. It's impossible to make out a word. Artyom hesitated for a moment, as if deciding something. Then he said quietly, let me try reading their lips. Diana gasped. I can read lips, he explained, without taking his eyes off the screen. When I was a child, I had a bad illness that affected my ears. I couldn't hear anything for almost 6 months. My mom hired a specialist who taught me to read lips. My hearing came back later, but the skill stayed. Sometimes it even helps when I watch movies without sound. It was so unexpected that for a brief moment, Diana forgot about the ache in her own heart. Still, she nodded, a little embarrassed, and handed him the phone. Please try, she whispered. Artyom held the phone carefully and zoomed in on Raisa Anatolievna's face, his eyes narrowing in concentration. Every subtle movement of her lips, every twitch, every gesture, he followed with intense focus. Diana could hardly breathe, her heartbeat hammering in her chest. For the first time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, someone could finally tell her the truth about what had been happening behind her back. Then he pressed play from the very beginning. A sharp, tense silence filled the car, broken only by the occasional sound of passing cars and Diana's shallow, uneven breaths. Artyom's eyes stayed glued to the screen, his expression so intense it looked like he was solving the most complicated problem in the world. His eyebrows were drawn together, his jaw tight. Time seemed to stretch on forever. Minutes passed, maybe even longer, but Diana didn't notice. She just sat there, frozen, gripping the edge of her seat. Finally, the video ended. Artyom didn't move. He stayed looking at the pause screen, as if trying to burn every detail into his mind. What is it?" Diana whispered, her voice barely audible, trembling with fear and anticipation. Slowly, Artyom raised his eyes to meet hers. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp, filled with cold understanding. "Your mother-in-law," he began carefully, then stopped. Diana's heart skipped a beat. She swallowed hard, feeling her stomach drop. Everything clicked into place in her mind. The fake signature, the strange debt, her husband always away, the perfectly acted stroke. None of it was coincidence. None of it was a string of unfortunate accidents. This was a carefully planned, cold-blooded scheme, and she had been cast as the victim from the very start. Diana stared at a single point in the distance, her mind empty. She felt nothing but a deep, deafening void inside her chest, like the world had been drained of color and sound. Artyom started the car quietly and pulled back onto the road. His silent presence was the only thing keeping her from collapsing into tears right there in the seat. Finally, the taxi stopped in front of her house. "We're here," Artyom said softly. She wanted to thank him, to say anything, but the words caught in her throat. "Diana," he began carefully, "I don't have the right to tell you what to do. But I saw your face when you were talking to that boy, and I see your face now. Don't react too quickly. Don't give them what they're waiting for. Your husband and your mother-in-law, they might be hoping to make you look unstable, emotional, or even crazy." He paused, choosing his words with care. "Pretend you don't know anything, at least for now. You have a week until the next court hearing. That's time to gather evidence, to understand what's really going on before you make your move." He handed her the phone. Their fingers brushed for a moment. The touch was brief, but warm and reassuring. Diana took the phone in her hand. Artyom's words hit her like a bucket of cold water, shocking her back to clarity. He was right. Absolutely right. Tears and outbursts. That's exactly what her husband and mother-in-law wanted. They wanted her to lose control, to show weakness, so they could win. But now, Diana understood she couldn't give them that satisfaction. Not now, not ever. She took a deep, steadying breath, holding the phone tightly. This time, she would face the battle fully awake, fully aware, and fully in control. "Thank you," she finally managed to whisper, her voice trembling but firm. The taxi driver only nodded shortly in response, silent and calm. Diana stepped out of the car and stood for a moment in the cold evening wind, staring up at the windows of her house. Everything felt distant, almost unreal. Then she turned and watched the car drive away, leaving her alone again. Alone with her problems, alone with the betrayal of the people she had trusted most. Her hand shook so badly that she couldn't fit the key into the lock. The metal was icy against her fingers, cold enough to make them sting. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, but in the hollow quiet, filled only with the sound of her own heartbeat, she heard something else. A soft, plaintive squeak. It came from somewhere beneath the overgrown hydrangea bush she loved so much. Diana froze, listening carefully. The sound came again, more insistent this time. Slowly, almost like in a dream, she moved around the side of the house, her heart beating fast, not with fear, but with a strange, uneasy anticipation. She squatted down and gently pushed aside the damp, dew-covered leaves. That's when she saw them. Two tiny, furred little bodies pressed close together, shivering. One was black, shiny like a crow's wing, with a small white patch on its chest like a tiny little bib. The other was fiery red, with bright, intelligent little eyes that seemed too knowing for such a small creature. They looked up at her with a mixture of fear and hope, and Diana felt her chest tighten painfully. Two abandoned, defenseless lives, forgotten, unwanted, and alone. "Oh, my poor babies," she whispered softly. "Have you been betrayed, too?" The little red one let out a small, uncertain bark and took a tentative step forward. The black one whimpered and tried to hide behind its sibling. In that moment, Diana knew she couldn't leave them there, alone in the cold, in the dark. For a split second, the thought of Maxim flashed to her mind. He had hated having animals in the house, but it was gone as quickly as it came. What did it matter now? These little lives needed her. Her mind raced. Should she take one? Two? Could she even manage both? It was pure madness. But as she looked into their trusting, tiny eyes, she realized she couldn't choose. How could she decide which one to save and which one to leave behind to face loneliness? Or worse? No, she said firmly to herself, her voice steady. I won't do that. I can't. She scooped both little creatures up carefully, holding them close. Their tiny hearts beat fast against her chest, and she felt a flicker of warmth and purpose stir inside her. For the first time that evening, amid all the fear and betrayal, she felt that she was doing exactly what was right. She would take care of them. Both of them. No compromises, no choices that would break her heart. Because sometimes, saving someone else, even the smallest, most fragile lives, was enough to remind her that not everything was lost. Carefully, so as not to scare them, Diana stretched out her hands and lifted both little ones. They were lighter than she had imagined, warm and trembling in her arms. Holding the tiny creatures close, she could feel their little hearts beating fast, almost in time with her own. For the first time in hours, a shadow of a smile appeared on her lips. She stepped into the house. Silence greeted her. Not a single sound came from her mother-in-law's room. Diana moved slowly, trying to make no noise at all, as she carried the puppies into the bathroom. All right, little ones, she whispered gently, turning on the warm water. Let's get you cleaned up. The puppies squeaked and trembled as she washed away the dirt and grime from the streets. Despite their nervousness, Diana kept talking to them softly, her voice calm and soothing, telling them everything would be all right. After the bath, she dried them carefully with old, soft towels and wrapped them snugly in a warm blanket. Then she poured some milk into a small dish and crumbled a bit of bread from her pizzeria on top. The little puppies, forgetting all their fear, immediately dove into the food, nudging and jostling each other with their tiny faces, making the most ridiculous little chomping noises. All right, the red one. I'll call you Fox, Diana decided, watching the fiery little pup eat with gusto. And you, little black one, you'll be Cole. Her heart warmed a little. It felt like a small piece of light breaking through the heaviness of the day. She prepared a little bed for them in a large cardboard box from her kitchen mixer. The puppies, now full and warm, curled up together in a little mixed-color ball and fell asleep almost instantly. Taking a deep breath, Diana headed toward her mother-in-law's room, putting on her mask of the caring daughter-in-law, the one she had worn for the last 6 months, every day. As she entered the room, the familiar scent of medicines and freshly laundered linens surrounded her. Her mother-in-law lay on the bed with her eyes closed, her face calm and expressionless, like a porcelain doll. Raisa Anatolievna, I'm home, Diana said softly as she approached the bed. How are you feeling? I brought dinner for you. The woman didn't move. Slowly, her eyes opened, and her gaze was dull, empty. Yet Diana, who had learned to see through appearances over the months, noticed something in that emptiness. Something unspoken. Even in that blank stare, Diana could sense the faint, hidden awareness behind it. And for a moment, she allowed herself to feel hope again. Hope that beneath the stillness, beneath the mask, something real remained. Diana placed the tray with the pureed soup on the little bedside table, the same one her mother-in-law had used to reach for the phone earlier. Let me feed you, she said softly, her voice steady, without the slightest tremor. And with that, she began, spoonful by spoonful, feeding the woman who that very morning might have been scheming with her own son on how to deceive Diana. After the soup, she changed her mother-in-law's underwear, wiped her skin gently with a damp towel, and replaced the bed linens. Every movement was precise, almost mechanical. On the outside, Diana looked calm and controlled. Inside, however, a storm raged. She wanted to scream, to shake the woman by the shoulders and demand, "Why are you doing this to me?" But she stayed silent, continuing her role as the dutiful daughter-in-law to the very end. "Do you need anything?" Raisa Anatolyevna? Water, perhaps? She asked, tucking the blanket more snugly around her. If yes, please blink once, she thought. Her mother-in-law gave a faint blink. And just then, the quiet of the house was shattered by a sharp, insistent ring at the door. Diana jumped. Who could possibly be visiting at this hour? She cast one last glance at her mother-in-law, who seemed utterly uninterested in the outside world, and went to answer. Her heart dropped. Two men were standing at the door. One, tall, with a heavy, serious gaze and a fine coat, she recognized immediately. Boris Vitalievich Zernovsky. Beside him was a younger man in a perfectly tailored suit, holding a briefcase with cold, calculating eyes. This, she quickly realized, was his lawyer, Denis Igorevich. Diana Vasilyevna, Zernovsky said in a low, calm voice, free of the hostility she had heard in court. Yes, that's me, Diana answered, instinctively stepping back to block the doorway with her body. The hearing has been postponed for a week. What do you need? We won't take much of your time, the lawyer added, his tone formal, sharp, and businesslike. We've come with a proposal, he continued, one that could save you from a lot of problems. What kind of proposal? Diana asked, a chill running down her spine. If you'll allow, let's discuss it inside, Zernovsky said, his gaze briefly scanning past her into the house. With no real choice, Diana stepped aside and led them into the living room. Suddenly, she felt trapped, cornered. The men did not sit down. They remained standing, solid, and imposing in the middle of the room. Diana Vasilyevna, the lawyer began, opening his briefcase. The debt of your mother-in-law, including all interest and penalties, is a very large sum. We have every reason to believe that you can pay it off. Therefore, we propose a simple solution. With that, Denis Igorevich took out a folder of documents and placed it carefully on the coffee table. This is a gift agreement, the lawyer began, opening the folder. You transfer ownership of your pizzeria to Boris Vitalievich, and in exchange, my client will forgive your entire debt. No court battles, no bailiffs, no ruined credit history, no collectors. A completely clean slate. Diana felt the air leave her lungs. Her pizzeria, her dream, her child, the place she had built from nothing, pouring in all her soul and energy. A warm, fragrant place that smelled of basil and happiness. And now they wanted her to give it away for a debt she never owed. No, she breathed out, shaking her head. Never. This is my pizzeria. I will not give it away. Think about it. The lawyer continued, his tone icy and flat. The alternative is enforcement. Seizure of your accounts, your property, including this house. You will lose everything, and the debt will still remain. Tears stung her eyes. Diana searched Zernovsky's face for any trace of sympathy, but expected to see only cold greed. To her astonishment, what she found there was not malice, but a hint of weariness, maybe even sadness. You don't even know what the money was spent on, do you? The businessman asked quietly, breaking the heavy silence. Diana shook her head, wiping away tears. Do you think your mother-in-law took it for medical treatment? Or for something more noble, he continued, looking straight into her eyes. I don't know, Diana whispered. Her voice trembled, but a small spark of hope flickered. Maybe there had been a reason, some tragedy she hadn't known about. Zernovsky let out a heavy sigh. He signaled his lawyer, who fell silent and moved to the window. Listen, Diana Vasilyevna, Boris said, his voice firm but calm. I do not enjoy destroying other people's lives. I am a businessman, not a monster. Your mother-in-law, Raisa Anatolyevna, did orchestrate this scheme. That's true. But that is not what interests me most. The money was never meant for her. Let me be clear. He paused, letting the words sink in. A large part of it she bought a house for her son, your husband Maxim. A luxurious cottage in a resort town on the Black Sea coast. Diana stared at him, unable to comprehend what she was hearing. Why? They already had a home. This house is for you, Zernovsky clarified. And each word struck her like a hammer, driving her deeper into despair. That house wasn't for her. It was for Maxim and his pregnant lover, Veronica. Her chest tightened. Her hands trembled. The world she had trusted, the family she thought she knew, it all felt like a lie. Every effort, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, and now she realized just how thoroughly she had been deceived. The world tilted and swirled before Diana's eyes. Her husband's pregnant lover. That's why he had agreed so easily to the adoption. It was all a cover. Smoke and mirrors, designed so she wouldn't suspect a thing. Their entire life together, every plan, every promise was a lie. But that wasn't all. Zernovsky's voice dropped to almost a whisper, and the sound sent an icy shiver down Diana's spine. She realized that what she was about to hear would be the worst thing imaginable. The rest of the money, he began slowly. Your husband, Diana Vasilyevna, he's not the smartest man, and he left too many digital traces. My people checked everything. And with that money, he bought something on the black market. Something very rare and very expensive. A synthetic cardiotoxin. Diana stared at him, frozen, unable to breathe. Zernovsky's gaze was full of pity, but it didn't help. It's a medical poison, he continued. No taste. No smell. If it's mixed in small amounts into food or drinks over 2 or 3 months, it builds up in the body and causes a massive heart attack. The death looks completely natural. No standard test will show anything unless you know exactly what to look for. The worst part, the poison slowly accumulates, and there is no cure. Hot tears streamed down Diana's face. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stop the shaking that racked her body. So this means, she whispered, gasping for breath. Maxim, he's been poisoning me all this time? The morning coffee he always made with such care. The smoothies he brought, claiming they were full of vitamins for a woman's beauty. The dinners they cooked together. All of it laced with poison. How long? Her voice broke into a sob. How long do I have? A month, a week, a day. How much of the poison had already built up in her body? Panic squeezed her throat like icy clamps. She looked at her hands, at the walls of the room, as if she was seeing them for the last time. She was dying.
Slowly. Carefully.
And it was the person she loved most who was doing it. I don't know, Zernovsky admitted honestly. I'm not a doctor. I'm just someone trying to get my money back. And just like that, he became a businessman again, his cold professionalism returning. Boris placed a business card on the table next to the folder. Diana sat there, stunned, every nerve in her body screaming. Her life, her love, her trust, all of it had been a trap. And now she had to figure out what to do while time ran out. You have 1 week, Diana Vasilyevna, Zernovsky said, his voice cold and firm. Find the money or sign the papers. My advice? Choose life. Whatever life you have left, choose it. Without another word, he turned and left. His lawyer followed silently behind him. The door slammed shut, and the house fell back into its familiar silence. But now, it wasn't just silence. It was deadly, suffocating quiet. Diana stood frozen in the middle of the living room, unable to move. Her body felt heavy, her limbs numb, as though she were fading away piece by piece. Her heart hammered, and all she could think was that now she just had to wait for her heart to stop. But then something clicked inside her. A surge of anger, cold and piercing, pushed out the fear and despair.
No.
She would not sit quietly and wait for death. She would not let them win. Without wiping her tears, Diana spun around and stormed toward her mother-in-law's room. She flipped on the light, and the harsh lamp exposed the pale face lying on the pillow. I know everything, Diana's voice rang out, trembling with fury and pain. Raisa Anatolyevna flinched. For the first time in 6 months, her face was no longer a lifeless mask. Real fear showed in her eyes. She slowly lifted herself onto her elbows, struggling visibly. Diana, dear, don't call me that, she shrieked. You knew everything from the start. You helped him. You bought a house for his mistress. And all the while you watched me care for you like a complete fool, and secretly you were planning with him how to get rid of me. No. Diana spat, her voice sharp, shaking with rage. No, it's not like that, Reisa stammered, coughing violently. The stroke, it was real, truly real. Only the paralysis wasn't complete. I could move my left hand a little, I could speak a little. I was just afraid. Afraid? Diana laughed, but it was bitter, hysterical, hollow. I should have been afraid, afraid to live under the same roof with murderers. Reisa's eyes dropped, guilt written on every line of her wrinkled face. A single tear rolled slowly down her cheek. I knew about Maxim's infidelity, she whispered, her voice trembling. But he's my son, my only boy. I thought he would change. I thought he would see reason. Her voice faltered and she added softly, then that girl came. She said she was pregnant. Max, he lost his mind. He said he needed money for a new house. Raisa Anatolievna began, her voice trembling. To start a new life. He said he would divorce you. I believed him. I helped him with the money, and I even forged your signature. I thought it would be better for everyone. And then I had the stroke. Diana's fists clenched. Her blood boiled. Better, she spat. You call this better? He was trying to kill me. Kill me, Raisa Anatolievna. And you just stood there? His own mother? Diana stepped closer to the bed, her anger sharp, eyes blazing. Suddenly, her mother-in-law's voice hardened, steel cutting through fear. No,
Not that, she cried.
I didn't help him with that. I found out by accident. I overheard a phone conversation about the poison, about the heart attack. Raisa buried her face in her trembling hands and began to sob. I raised a monster, but I could not let him get rid of you. You've been like a daughter to me all these years, kind, caring. I regret 100 times that I forged your signature, but it's too late now. Diana's eyes narrowed. And what did you do then? She demanded, voice sharp, laced with ice. She couldn't believe a single word. Raisa lifted tearful eyes to meet her daughter-in-law's. The pain in them was so raw, so desperate, that for a moment, Diana paused. I found it, Raisa whispered. The powder. I found where he hid it in his little box, the one he keeps for his trinkets. Just a tiny vial. I waited until he went on his trip, and then I poured it all into the sink. All of it. Diana leaned forward, heart hammering. And what did you put instead? Her voice was harsh, almost a whisper, but desperate, clinging to every word as if it were a lifeline. I used sugar instead, her mother-in-law admitted, voice barely audible. Fine powdered sugar, so fine it looks like dust. He would never notice the difference. So all this time, Maxim unknowingly was giving you nothing but ordinary sugar. Diana froze. Her chest heaved, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. She stood in the middle of the room, numb, unsure how to process what she had just heard. She would live. There was no poison in her body. And the woman who had helped destroy her marriage, who had betrayed her trust in so many ways, had also, strangely, saved her life. For the first time in hours, Diana looked at Raisa Anatolievna and, in a small, silent way, felt a flicker of pity for her. Then a tiny, familiar sound reached her ears. A soft, tentative whine coming from under the door. Fox and Cole. They had woken up and, together, were searching for their new owner. Diana's lips curved into a faint, exhausted smile. For the first time that night, something in the room felt alive and safe. She would survive this, and somehow they would all get through it. Diana slowly turned around and walked toward the door. Her steps felt heavy, almost as if the weight of everything that had happened pressed down on her chest. She made her way to the living room, sank into a chair at the table, and opened her contacts. Her hand trembled slightly as she scrolled to find the number of her favorite husband. A wave of nausea rose in her throat. She swallowed hard, trying to steady herself. Then, after a deep breath, she renamed the contact, Maxim, and pressed the call button. To her surprise, he picked up almost immediately. Diana, finally, he said, his voice light, carefree, almost cheerful. I'm sorry, he continued. I was in a meeting and my phone was on silent. I'm exhausted. like a dog.
How are you?
How's your mom? Diana's hands tightened around the phone. Her voice came out flat, cold, deliberate. Mom is fine, Maxim. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm filing for divorce. On the other end, there was silence. Then he finally spoke, incredulous.
What?
Are you joking? What's going on? Is this because of the court? Darling, I'll fix it. I swear. I'll come, and we'll sort everything out. It's all just a misunderstanding. Diana's voice remained steady, ice in her tone. There's no misunderstanding. I know everything about the debt, your mother, the house by the sea, and about your pregnant mistress. I know, Maxim, that you tried to poison me. For a moment, only ragged breathing could be heard on the line. And then, Maxim laughed. A quiet, chilling laugh, low and dark, that made a cold shiver run down Diana's spine. Well, he said finally, his voice soft but menacing, if you know everything, what's the point in denying it? Are you sure you'll even have time to file for divorce? You know, court cases take a long time. And suddenly it all clicked. Maxim had assumed the poison was already working. He thought she would be too weak, too sick, to survive until the divorce could go through. Diana's lips curved into a small, bitter smile. We'll see, she said calmly, and ended the call, immediately blocking his number. A week later, the court session felt like a mere formality. Following the advice of the lawyer she had hurriedly hired, a smart and capable professional, Diana agreed to a settlement. Boris Cernovsky proved to be a man of his word. After the court cleared, he confirmed the arrangement. The house will be transferred to your ownership in full, in settlement of the debt, he stated plainly. As we agreed, Raisa Anatolyevna will not be evicted. I will hire a professional caregiver with medical training, so she will receive all the care she needs. Diana felt a strange lightness in her chest, a release of tension that had held her down for weeks. She looked at him, gratitude in her eyes, and said sincerely, "Thank you." For the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of peace. Even after everything, Diana couldn't just throw the woman out, the one who, though betraying her in some ways, had also saved her life. Raisa Anatolyevna may have been part of the scheme, but without her intervention, Diana wouldn't have survived the danger she'd been in. No need to thank me, Boris Cernovsky said one last time. Consider it compensation for all the trouble your ex-husband caused you. I don't want problems with someone like him. And you, Diana Vasilievna, I wish you luck. Your pizzeria, yes, I stopped by recently. Excellent pepperoni. You definitely have potential. Those words, simple as they were, stayed with Diana. She finally felt a small flicker of reassurance amidst everything that had happened. Not long after, she moved into a small rented apartment just above her pizzeria. 2 rooms, a tiny kitchen, and a huge balcony that the 2 little pups, Fox and Cole, immediately claimed as their playground. From morning to late at night, Diana worked like a whirlwind. She invented new recipes, planned promotions, and personally greeted every guest who came in. Her pizzeria quickly transformed from a cozy little place into the most popular spot in the neighborhood. Business was booming, and soon she decided it was time to expand, open a second location on the other side of the city. That meant she desperately needed new staff, especially delivery drivers. One evening, after she had finished wiping down the tables and closing the shop, there was a timid knock at the door. It was Artyom. Without his car, he seemed taller, somehow more vulnerable, yet determined. "Sorry to come so late," he said, a slight limp in his step. "I saw your ad. You're looking for a delivery driver." Diana froze, rag in hand. "Artyom, but your leg, you have surgery in 3 weeks." He smiled. "The doctors say I'll be running like new soon. But for now, I can drive. I really need work. And besides, I heard you have the best pizza in the city, so I thought it'd be nice to get it with a staff discount." Diana couldn't help but laugh. "Of course, you'll get a discount," she promised. "But my standards are high. Pizza must arrive hot, and the driver has to be polite." Artyom grinned. "Then consider me already hired. When do I start, boss?" And just like that, Artyom became a part of her life. At first as an employee, soon as a friend. He brought her coffee in the mornings, fixed the shop's constantly malfunctioning sign, and played with the puppies while she caught up on paperwork. On the day of her divorce, he even waited for her outside the courthouse. Maxim was there too, fully aware that he was about to lose everything. His instincts hadn't failed him. The judge awarded all property and assets to Diana, recognizing her as the financial backbone of the family. When Maxim saw her alive, healthy, cheeks with a faint blush, eyes sparkling with confidence, he froze. The woman he had tried to control, to manipulate, to hurt, was finally free, standing tall and stronger than ever. "How is that possible?" whispered her ex-husband when they found themselves alone in the hallway. "Sugar doesn't kill, Maxim," Diana said calmly, looking him straight in the eyes. "It only makes life sweeter. Too bad you never understood that."
Goodbye.
She turned and walked away without looking back. At the exit, Artyom was waiting for her. "Is it all over?" he asked quietly. "Not over," she replied with a small smile. "It's only just beginning." She told him what had happened after everything fell apart. The little seaside house had burned down after being struck by lightning. The mistress had left her ex-husband for someone richer. And as it turned out, there never even was a pregnancy. Artyom's surgery went perfectly, and after 2 months of recovery, he returned to the pizzeria without a single limp. He came up to the counter where Diana was taking orders and looked at her with a long, serious gaze. "Hi," he said so quietly that only she could hear him. "I want to ask you something." Her heart started beating faster. "Matvey, have you thought about him lately? Do you still want him?" His question made her heart skip a beat. The boy, Matvey, had been in her thoughts almost every day. He was a dream from a past life, a little piece of real hope that had survived the darkness. "Very much," she whispered. "More than anything." "I do too," said Artyom softly. "I want to go with you, if you'll let me. Not just as a driver, and not just as a friend." Diana looked into his honest eyes and saw her future there. Not the one she had planned, but the one that fate had reserved for her. "I won't just let you," she said, smiling through tears. "I want that too." The adoption process was long and challenging, but they went through it together. Every document, every interview, every visit to the orphanage brought them closer. They watched Matvey slowly open up. At first, he was quiet and cautious, but soon he started to trust them. He listened excitedly to Artyom's stories about cars and smiled shyly at the little pies Diana made for him. Finally, the day came when they received the official adoption papers. The three of them walked out of the child services office, happy and united. Matvey held their hands tightly. "Now I can call you Mom and Dad," he said. "Of course, if that's what you want," Diana replied, tears streaming down her face. "I do. I really do," he shouted. "And now we're going home to see Fox and Cole?" Diana asked gently. "Of course, Mom," Matvey said. Artyom scooped him up and spun him around in the air. "Let's go home." Their home became the small apartment above the pizzeria. It didn't feel small anymore. It was alive with laughter, the barking of 2 growing dogs, and the smell of happiness. In the evenings, they all sat together on the big couch. Matvey would read, resting his head on Diana's lap, while Fox and Cole slept at Artyom's feet. And just like that, endless tenderness, trust in tomorrow, and the smell of freshly baked pizza became their new definition of home. It was a home filled with love, warmth, and the certainty that no matter what life threw at them, they would face it together.